bite of the hollow. Whispers of the wind echoed through the barren trees, reaching out to the forgotten village of Blackthorn Hollow, a desolate place where the sun dared not linger. October had arrived, bringing with it an eerie metallic scent that hung in the air, hinting at an impending storm that never seemed to break. Elias Crane, a man of slender build in his late 30s, sat huddled over a cluttered desk in his cramped trailer on the outskirts of the hollow. The trailer, a relic of better days, bore the scars of time-dented aluminum siding and windows clouded with grime. Within, the sickly blue glow of multiple monitors illuminated the room, casting long shadows on walls adorned with maps, newspaper clippings, and cryptic notes written in crimson ink. Elias was no ordinary ghost hunter. He would scoff at such a title. His tools were sophisticated signal analyzers, spectrum scanners, and antennas that seemed plucked from a Cold War-era bunker. For years, he had pursued what he referred to as the hum, a mysterious low-frequency signal that manifested in places where people vanished, where tales of the supernatural took root. Blackthorn Hollow had become his latest fixation, a place where the hum resonated louder than ever before. The hollow was not just any ordinary place. Once a bustling logging town, it had fallen into disrepair after a series of mysterious disappearances in the 1970s. Whispers of the lights in the woods haunted the remaining residents, tales of eerie green and violet glows that appeared on moonless nights. While the official explanation pointed to sinkholes or wild animals, Elias was convinced there was more to the story. Armed with his makeshift equipment, Elias delved into the heart of the mystery. His cracked headphones and jumbled mess of wires picked up a strange signal, a low, pulsating hum that seemed to resonate with his very bones. But there was something else, a rhythmic pulse that echoed like a heartbeat. The source of this signal was none other than the sink, a desolate crater in the forest where life refused to thrive. As Elias recorded the coordinates and noted the time of the signal spike, a sense of urgency gripped him. This was his chance to uncover the truth, to finally solve the mystery that had haunted him since his sister vanished in a similar fashion years ago. The hum had taken her, and now it beckoned Elias to the heart of the hollow, promising answers that had eluded him for so long. The trailer's single window rattled as a gust swept through. Elias glanced outside, where the forest loomed like a wall of black. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker, a pinprick of green light darting between the trees. He blinked, and it was gone. Probably just his eyes playing tricks, strained from hours staring at screens. Still, he grabbed his flashlight and a handheld recorder, a battered device he modified to capture ultra-low frequencies. If the signal was active, he wasn't going to sit here and let it fade. The night was colder than he expected, the kind of cold that sank into your bones and made every breath feel like a blade. Elias pulled his jacket tighter, the flashlight beam cutting a narrow path through the underbrush. The sink was a mile away, through a tangle of briars and fallen logs. The locals avoided it, claiming the ground was unstable, but Elias had seen the satellite images. The sink wasn't a natural formation. It was too perfect, too circular, like a scar carved into the earth. As he walked, the recorder hummed in his hand, its needle twitching. The signal was still there, pulsing like a living thing. He stopped to adjust the gain, and that's when he heard it, a sound like a whisper, buried in the static. It wasn't English, wasn't any language he recognized. It was sharp, guttural, like the chatter of insects amplified 1,000 times. His pulse quickened. He held the recorder closer, straining to make sense of it, but the sound cut off abruptly, replaced by a high-pitched whine that made him wince. "Damn it!" he cursed under his breath, frustration evident as he shook the device in his hand. The needle was now pegged, the signal overwhelming the circuits. He tried switching it off and on again, but the irritating whine persisted. And then, A chilling realization washed over him. The forest had fallen eerily silent. No crickets chirped, no owls hooted, not even the rustle of leaves could be heard. It was as if the world had come to a standstill, holding its breath in anticipation. Elias swiftly swung the flashlight around, half expecting to catch a glimpse of glowing eyes in the darkness. But there was nothing. Just the looming trees, their twisted branches resembling frozen bolts of lightning. With each step he took, the crunch of his boots echoed loudly in the oppressive stillness. The air felt dense, charged with an ominous energy, akin to the tense calm before a violent storm. A shiver ran down his spine as he realized the hairs on his arms were standing on end. Just as he contemplated retreating, his eyes caught sight of it once more, a vivid green light, shining brighter this time, hovering just beyond a cluster of pines. It pulsated in sync with the signal emanating from his recorder, a slow and deliberate rhythm that sent a chill down his spine. Elias stood frozen in place, his breath caught in his throat. The light was not aimless, it was purposeful, moving in a circular pattern around the sink, drawing closer with each passing moment. A conflict raged within him, torn between the instinct to flee back to safety and the relentless drive that had fueled his quest for answers for 2 decades. With a firm grip on his flashlight, he pressed on, each step sinking into the soft earth as he approached the sink. The trees parted, revealing a barren clearing that stretched out before him, the ground cracked and desolate, with a strange depression at its center. A mysterious green light danced at the edge of the clearing, beckoning him forward. Elias raised his recorder, the needle trembling as the whine grew louder, almost unbearable. Yet beneath the noise, he detected a faint pattern, a code of sorts. Frantically jotting down the sequences in his notebook, he pondered whether it was binary or something far more enigmatic. Summoning his courage, he called out into the darkness, demanding the presence to reveal itself. The light pulsed, revealing a fleeting glimpse of a twisted, otherworldly figure before vanishing, leaving only an eerie silence in its wake. Heart pounding, Elias stood frozen, the air thick with an unseen force. As he backed away, his flashlight revealed a chilling discovery: the cracks in the ground formed a deliberate pattern, leading to a metallic object half buried at the center of the depression. The tension in the air was palpable, as if the very forest held its breath, waiting for the next move in this enigmatic dance of light and shadow. He knelt down, gently brushing away the soil to reveal a mysterious disk. It was no larger than a dinner plate, its surface adorned with symbols that seemed to be a blend of intricate circuitry and ancient hieroglyphs. As he touched it, the disk emitted a faint warmth and vibration, causing the recorder in his hand to suddenly spring back to life with a wild jump of the needle. Startled, Elias stumbled back, almost dropping the disk, only to see a green light flicker directly above him. Fear gripped him, and he ran through the dense forest, feeling as though the trees were closing in on him, branches clawing at his jacket and roots tripping him up. The cacophony of noise from the recorder was deafening now, the signal so intense it felt like it was piercing his skull. He didn't stop until he reached the safety of his trailer, slamming the door shut and securing it with a deadbolt. Gasping for breath, he leaned against the wall, still clutching the mysterious disc in his hand. Inside the trailer, the monitors flickered with static, casting an eerie glow on the symbols etched on the disc. The hum that had started as a faint vibration was now all-encompassing, filling the air and resonating in his very bones. Desperate for answers, Elias plugged the recorder into his laptop, only to have the screen freeze and go black. A chilling message appeared in glowing white letters against the darkness. "We see you." Elias's heart raced as he stared at the ominous words, his mouth dry with fear. The hum grew louder, the lights in the trailer flickering ominously. Outside, the wind howled, carrying with it the faint pulse of green light, drawing closer and closer. The sense of impending danger was palpable, and Elias knew that he was not alone. Elias lay awake, trapped in the suffocating confines of the trailer. The walls seemed paper-thin, unable to block out the incessant hum that reverberated through the air, the floor, even his own teeth. On his desk sat the mysterious disc, its alien markings illuminated by the flickering monitors that had sprung back to life with a bone-chilling message, "We see you." Though the words had vanished from the screen, they lingered in Elias's mind like a sharp blade. He had unplugged the laptop, shut off the monitors, but the relentless hum persisted, pounding in his head like a drumbeat. As dawn broke, the forest outside was cloaked in mist, the trees looming like specters in the dim light. Elias sat on the floor, the disc cradled in his lap, a multimeter in one hand and a notebook in the other. Hours slipped by as he probed the artifact, trying to decipher its enigmatic nature. It was not metal, not quite its surface smooth and almost organic, like polished bone, yet it crackled with erratic bursts of electricity. The symbols etched into it seemed to shift and writhe under certain angles of light, forming incomprehensible patterns that defied explanation. The recorder, now powered by a backup battery, continued to capture the strange signal. The binary-like code Elias had intercepted at the sync had evolved into something more intricate, almost resembling a language. Though he was no cryptographer, he could sense a deliberate structure to the signal. It was no random noise, it was purposeful, connected to the disc in his hands. As he moved the artifact closer to the recorder, the signal spiked, the needle jumping erratically as if the disc itself were broadcasting a message of its own. Desperate for answers, Elias knew that Blackthorn Hollow was not the place to find them. Cutler's Gap, the nearest town, was a mere cluster of gas stations and diners along the highway, devoid of the expertise he sought. However, there was one glimmer of hope in the form of Dr. Evelyn Voss, a retired geophysicist with a penchant for studying anomalous electromagnetic fields. Elias had stumbled upon her name in an obscure forum post discussing the mysterious lights of the hollow. She was a long shot, but she was his only shot. With determination in his eyes, Elias carefully wrapped the mysterious disc in a cloth, stashed it in his backpack, and grabbed his keys. As he stepped outside his trailer, the door creaked ominously, and the mist enveloped him like a shroud. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as if anticipating his next move. Despite the eerie silence, Elias couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of being followed by unseen eyes. The memory of the strange green light flickered in his mind, but the thick mist obscured any trace of it. Driving through the winding road to Cutler's Gap, Elias felt a sense of unease creeping over him. The cracked asphalt seemed to whisper secrets, while the towering pines loomed overhead like silent sentinels. The radio remained silent, the only sound being the faint hum in his ears. The weight of the disc in his backpack felt heavier than it should, almost as if it had a life of its own. Occasionally, a subtle vibration pulsed through the seat of his truck, sending shivers down his spine. As Elias journeyed towards his destination, the tension in the air grew palpable. The unknown awaited him in Cutler's Gap, and he could only hope that Dr. Voss held the key to unlocking the mysteries that plagued Blackthorn Hollow. Cutler's Gap loomed before Elias like a ghost town, its desolation palpable in the air. The town was a monochrome wasteland, devoid of life except for the occasional flicker of color from weathered billboards. Dr. Voss resided in a modest house on the outskirts, surrounded by unkempt weeds and decaying weather vanes. Elias parked his car and approached the door, the weight of the disc he carried a constant reminder of the gravity of his discovery. A woman in her 60s, with piercing gray eyes and a cascade of white hair, greeted him. Dressed in flannel and jeans, her demeanor exuded a mix of curiosity and suspicion as she recognized Elias as the one who had called about the hollow. Introducing himself as Elias Crane, he extended a hand that went unshaken. With a sense of urgency, Elias revealed that he had found something of great importance and urged Dr. Voss to take a look. Inside, the scent of coffee and aged books filled the air as they entered a room cluttered with scientific instruments. Oscilloscopes, seismographs, and shelves overflowing with journals surrounded them. A laptop buzzed on a table, displaying a map of the hollow with red pins marking key locations, including the sink. The stage was set for a dramatic revelation, as Elias and Dr. Voss stood on the precipice of a discovery that could change everything they thought they knew about the hollow. Elias carefully unwrapped the mysterious disc, placing it delicately on the table. Voss's eyes widened in astonishment, but she refrained from touching it. Instead, she swiftly donned a pair of gloves and leaned in closer, her breath catching in anticipation. "Where did you find this?" she inquired, her voice tinged with curiosity. Elias replied, "I found it in the sink." It was buried, but not deeply. It almost seemed as though it wanted to be discovered. Voss shot him a skeptical glance. "Do not attribute human characteristics to it. Objects do not possess intentions," she stated firmly, though her tone wavered slightly. She picked up a magnifying glass and examined the intricate symbols etched on the disc, her lips moving silently as she tried to decipher their meaning. "These symbols are not random. They are structured, like a form of script. However, it is unlike any language I have encountered before." She mused aloud. Elias then produced a recorder and played the signal captured from the disc. The room filled with a haunting hum, accompanied by a guttural chatter that sent shivers down Voss's spine. She paled visibly, grabbing a notepad and pen to hastily jot down notes. "This is not mere electromagnetic interference. It is modulated, like a carrier wave. Something is utilizing it for transmission purposes," Voss explained, her hand moving swiftly across the paper. "Something?" Elias inquired, his voice filled with a sense of urgency and intrigue. She remained silent, her focus on connecting the recorder to her laptop and analyzing the signal through a spectrogram. The screen illuminated with sharp, erratic lines that formed a pattern mirroring the symbols on the disc. "This is unbelievable," she whispered. "The frequency of the signal is constantly changing, adapting to its surroundings. I've encountered this phenomenon before, but never to this extent." Elias inquired, "Where have you seen this before?" Voss hesitated briefly before gesturing towards the map displayed on her screen. "The hollow is not the only location affected by this. There are other mysterious places: Bermuda, the Taos Hum, the Devil's Sea. Locations where low-frequency signals have been linked to disappearances, equipment malfunctions, and even psychological disturbances. I once studied a site in Nevada, a desolate area where the ground emitted a similar hum. We discovered structures. Not of human origin. Not natural either." Elias felt a knot form in his stomach. "What happened at that site?" "We left," she stated bluntly, "and I retired. But this..." She tapped the disc thoughtfully. "This is different. It's active. It's reacting to our presence." As if by some unseen force, the disc began to vibrate, emitting a low thrum that reverberated through the table. The laptop screen flickered, the spectrogram dissolving into static before slowly morphing into a three-dimensional wireframe, rotating like a mesmerizing hologram. It depicted the sink in eerie detail, but below it lay a network of tunnels pulsating with an ominous green light. Elias found himself transfixed, his mouth dry as he struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. "What in the world is that?" he managed to choke out. Voss, consumed by urgency, frantically typed away in an attempt to salvage the data. However, her efforts were in vain as the screen abruptly went black. The disc's vibrations intensified, the hum filling the room and drowning out all other sounds. Elias's vision blurred momentarily, catching a glimpse of a shadow in his periphery, tall and angular, its limbs contorted in unnatural ways. He blinked, and the apparition vanished, but the air seemed to thicken, charged with an unsettling presence. "We must take this to a secure lab," Voss declared, her voice strained with tension. "This is not safe here." Elias was completely entranced, his gaze fixed on the disk as the symbols glowed faintly and pulsed in time with a mysterious hum. Ignoring Voss's warning, he reached out and touched the surface, only to be hit by a surge of sound and pressure that sent him crashing to his knees. His vision blurred with incomprehensible images, a sky of violet clouds, a city of jagged spires, and countless eyes staring at him from the shadows. As he regained consciousness, he found himself on the floor with Voss urgently shaking him. The disk was still in his grasp, its glow now dim but comforting against his skin. The hum had quieted, but it lingered within him, a constant pulse echoing his heartbeat. "We're not alone," Elias murmured. Voss's expression was grave. "We never were." They made plans to reconvene the following day, after Voss reached out to a colleague at a university lab. Elias drove back to the hollow, the disk safely tucked in his backpack, the hum a haunting presence. The mist had thickened, the road felt narrower, and the trees seemed to loom closer. He kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that eerie green light, but the night remained ominously empty. Back at the trailer, he secured the door and placed the disk on the desk. The monitors remained dark, but the atmosphere crackled with tension, as if a tempest loomed on the horizon. Despite his efforts to rest, every time he shut his eyes, haunting images flooded his mind: the violet sky, the towering spires, the piercing eyes. The hum grew louder, evolving from a mere noise into a voice, murmuring in an incomprehensible language. Unbeknownst to him, a verdant light encircled the trailer, its presence unnoticed until it was too late. The pulsating green light outside cast a rhythmic glow, penetrating the dingy windows and casting eerie shadows on the walls. Elias sat motionless at his desk, clutching the disk tightly, feeling its vibrations resonate through his hands. The hum transcended mere sound, transforming into a palpable force, a mysterious entity that seemed to press against his mind, whispering in a language that was both foreign and strangely familiar. The monitors, still disconnected, flickered to life, displaying static that gradually coalesced into the intricate wireframe image he had encountered at Voss's residence. The sink, its labyrinthine tunnels aglow with light, and something profound, something immense, stirring deep within the earth. He had not spoken to Voss since the day before. She had promised to arrange transportation for the disk, to deliver it to a lab in Boston where it could be studied under controlled conditions. But her last call had been brief, her voice tinged with fear. "Don't touch it," she had warned. "Stay away from the sink. I will take care of this." Elias had simply nodded on the phone, but the disk seemed to have a hold on him, drawing him in with each passing moment. He had not mentioned the visions to her: the violet sky, the towering spires, the haunting eyes. He had not told her that the hum was now communicating with him, not through words, but through feelings, curiosity, hunger, invitation. The door of the trailer suddenly rattled, even though the wind had long since ceased. Elias held his breath, staring at the lock, half expecting it to give way. The green light grew stronger, and for a moment, he saw shapes within it, figures too tall, too thin, their limbs swaying like reeds in a storm. The hum intensified, and his vision blurred, the trailer fading away to reveal a different place, a cavern of black stone, its walls adorned with the same symbols as the disk, bathed in a sickly green light. He found himself in the center, surrounded by those angular beings, their eyes like endless voids, observing, waiting. One of them reached out, its hand a luminous claw, and he staggered back to the trailer, gasping for breath, the disk scorching his hands. The door remained locked, the light still swirling outside, but the buzzing grew louder, more demanding. It urged him to move, to take action. With a sense of urgency, he rose to his feet and hastily stashed the disc in his backpack. He knew he couldn't stay there any longer. The trailer was no longer a safe haven. Nothing felt safe anymore. Elias swiftly grabbed his flashlight, recorder, and a crowbar from beneath the sink, though he knew the crowbar was more for reassurance than actual use. Pausing at the door, the once flickering green light now pulsed steadily, resembling a heartbeat. The buzzing had transformed into a direct order: come to the sink. Come to us. Reluctantly, he knew he had no choice but to comply. The thought of remaining in the trailer, waiting for the unknown to breach its walls, was unbearable. With a deep breath, he flung open the door and sprinted into the night, the frigid air nipping at his cheeks, the forest a blur of shadows and mist. The path to the sink seemed shorter than before, the trees seemingly guiding his way. The green light danced ahead, teasingly out of reach. His recorder, fastened to his belt, screeched with static, the needle maxed out, the signal so potent it felt as though it was rewriting his very thoughts. The buzzing enveloped him, permeating the ground, the air, his very being. It wasn't just beckoning him, it was laying claim to him. The sink loomed ominously ahead, its cracked and desolate surface illuminated by the eerie glow of the moonlight. In the center, a pulsating green light hovered, no longer a mere point but a constellation of flickering pulses, forming a ring above the sunken depression. Elias came to a halt at the edge, feeling his boots sink into the soft earth beneath him. The disc in his backpack began to vibrate, its rhythm synchronizing with the pulsating lights. And then, for the first time, he felt it communicate, not through words, but through a rush of vivid images, a vast network of stars, a machine ancient beyond comprehension, a purpose that transcended time itself. It was not a mere message, it was a commanding force. With a sense of urgency, Elias retrieved the disc from his backpack, its symbols glowing with an intensity that seemed to pierce through the darkness. The ring of lights above tightened, causing the ground to tremble violently, the cracks widening to reveal glimpses of the mysterious green glow beneath. The deafening hum grew louder, a cacophony of voices that drowned out all other sounds, overwhelming his senses. In a fleeting moment, he caught a glimpse of Mara's terrified face, her eyes wide with fear, before she vanished, replaced by enigmatic figures with angular forms, their limbs not of flesh but of something ethereal, light, energy, code. Stop! Elias bellowed, his voice drowned out by the ominous hum surrounding him. With determination, he raised the disc, poised to cast it into the sink and bring an end to the chaos. But before he could act, a sudden surge of lights and a violent tremor in the ground interrupted his plan. A brilliant column of green energy burst forth from the Earth's center, casting a blinding radiance over the clearing. The disc was ripped from Elias's grasp, drawn into the dazzling light where it hovered, spinning wildly with symbols ablaze. The hum intensified into a deafening scream, causing Elias to collapse to his knees, his mind reeling from the surreal sight before him. A gateway, a threshold to a realm where the laws of reality ceased to exist. Figures materialized from the blinding light, gliding towards him with an otherworldly grace. Their forms shifted between solidity and ethereality, their eyes mere nodes in a vast network. One of them reached out, its touch sending a chill of electricity through Elias, unraveling his very being. Memories, fears, and identity were torn apart like fragile threads. And then he saw Mara once more, not as she once was, but as a part of this enigmatic network, her voice beckoning him to join her. No! Elias cried out, clawing desperately at the ground to resist the overwhelming force pulling him towards the figures. Summoning all his strength, he lunged towards the spinning disc still ensnared in the blinding light. His fingers closed around it, and in that moment, the world around him erupted into chaos. As he slowly opened his eyes, he found himself lying in the sink, the ground beneath him cold and eerily still. The once bright lights had vanished, leaving only a faint whisper in the air. In his hand he held the cracked and faded disc, a relic of the mysterious events that had unfolded. The forest around him was silent, the heavy scent of ozone hanging in the air. With aching limbs and a mind filled with fragmented memories, he struggled to his feet. The sink, once a gaping crater, now lay sealed and silent, its secrets hidden away. Elias made his way back to the trailer, the weight of the disc heavy in his backpack. Uncertain of what had transpired, unsure if he had truly closed the gateway or merely delayed it, he felt the persistent hum in the air, a chilling reminder that the danger was not yet gone. It was waiting. Desperate for answers, he dialed Voss's number, only to be met with silence each time. With dawn approaching, he hit the road towards Cutler's Gap, the disc securely locked away in the truck's bed. Upon reaching Voss's abandoned home, he discovered a chilling note in her neat handwriting. "They know we know. Run." The sense of urgency and impending danger weighed heavily on Elias as he realized the gravity of the situation. The unknown forces at play were closing in, and he knew he had to act swiftly to protect himself and uncover the truth before it was too late. Elias stood still, unable to move. The hum reverberated through his being, connecting him to the hollow, to Mara, to the undeniable truth. Determined, he returned to his trailer, packed his equipment, and assembled a new, more powerful rig. The cracked disc on his desk emitted a faint glow in the darkness, a silent reminder of the forces at play. That night, the green light reappeared, a subtle presence circling the trailer. Elias observed it from his window, his recorder buzzing with anticipation, his notebook ready for new revelations. The hum guided him, pulling him towards the unknown, towards the next signal, the next threshold. In the quiet of Blackthorn Hollow, the sink remained still. But deep beneath the surface, something stirred. A pulse, barely perceptible at first, began to grow stronger. Like a single byte of data in a vast stream, it awaited the next connection, the next chapter in Elias's journey. The unknown beckoned, and Elias was ready to answer its call. The weeping statues. Lila had always harbored a deep aversion to statues. Their frozen stares and eerie stillness always left her feeling as though she was being watched. Despite being 31 years old, she believed she had outgrown this fear. However, upon moving into her new home, the garden behind it reignited that familiar sense of unease. The house she had purchased was a bargain, a decaying manor on the outskirts of Greyhaven, surrounded by a walled garden consumed by ivy. The realtor had downplayed the garden, describing it as quaint, but from the window on her first day, Lila saw it for what it truly was, a labyrinth of stone figures, weathered faces, and pleading hands. Alone in her new home, her savings depleted from a failed business venture, Lila found herself drawn to the garden. The house felt too large, its empty rooms echoing with the scent of damp stone and roses. Her initial plan was to renovate and sell the property, but the garden beckoned to her. On her second night in the house, unable to sleep, Lila ventured outside with a flashlight in hand. The statues loomed ominously in the darkness, their eyes hollow, their mouths frozen in silent screams. Some were cracked, others covered in moss, but all seemed to be watching her, their gazes penetrating. The air was frigid, the silence suffocating. Lila's flashlight flickered, casting dancing shadows that seemed to move independently of the statues. Approaching one figure, a woman with arms outstretched and tear-like stains on her face, Lila felt a strange warmth emanating from the stone beneath her touch. Startled, she withdrew her hand, her heart pounding in her chest. Suddenly, a sound shattered the silence, a low, wet sob that seemed to come from all directions at once, enveloping Lila in a chilling embrace. Frantically, she sprinted back to the house, slamming the door shut and locking it behind her. The sound of sobbing echoed through the walls, haunting and persistent. She searched every room, every window, but found nothing amiss. Her phone displayed no signal, its screen ominously dimming. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her as the sobbing intensified, accompanied by eerie whispers calling out her name in voices that were not of this world. As dawn broke, she noticed strange marks on her hands, thin lines resembling the fractures on the statues outside. They had not been there the day before. Lila tried to distract herself by unpacking, avoiding the garden where the statues stood. But an unsettling feeling lingered in the air, reflected in the distorted image she saw in the mirrors. Her eyes were too wide, her skin too pale, mirroring the statue's eerie appearance. The sobbing persisted, growing louder at night, accompanied by the sound of footsteps circling the house. In a moment of desperation, she reached out to a neighbor, Mr. Thorne, who warned her in a trembling voice to stay away from the garden. "They don't like to be seen," he cautioned before the line abruptly went dead. Driven by fear and curiosity, Lila scoured the house for answers. In the attic, she discovered a trunk adorned with a carving of a weeping face. Inside were letters dated back to 1874, penned by a man named Silas Gray. He spoke of the garden as the weeping ground, a place where statues held the souls of the lost. Silas described hearing cries, seeing faces in the stone, and feeling his own body undergo a chilling transformation. The final letter served as a chilling warning. "They seek to claim you as one of their own. Do not gaze upon them for too long." Lila's hands trembled as she read the ominous words etched into her skin. The markings had multiplied, creating intricate patterns reminiscent of the cracks on ancient statues. The sound of sobbing filled the air, growing louder with each passing moment. Through tear-filled eyes, she caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure outside, a human-like silhouette frozen among the statues. Frantically, she bolted the doors, but the house seemed to come alive, groaning and creaking as if possessed. Whispers filled the room, a haunting chorus calling out her name, compelling her to venture into the garden. Despite her fear, Lila found herself moving towards the darkness outside, her feet moving of their own accord. The garden appeared more sinister now, the statues looming closer together, their sorrowful faces illuminated by tears as dark as night. Her flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into a suffocating silence. The statues' gaze bore down on her, their hunger palpable as they beckoned her further into the labyrinthine garden. In the center stood a new statue, a likeness of herself with arms outstretched and eyes weeping ebony tears. A scream caught in her throat as the statues began to stir, their stone limbs creaking as they reached out for her. Desperately, she tried to flee, but the garden seemed to shift and twist, trapping her within its confines. The whispers returned, promising an end to her suffering, a twisted form of eternal peace. As she stumbled and fell to the ground, her skin glowing faintly with the cursed markings, she felt her body stiffen and her breath slow. The statues closed in around her, their faces morphing into her own, tears cascading down like a torrential downpour. She was being consumed by the stone, her very essence fading away as she became one with the cursed statues. Lila awoke on the cold, hard floor, her body throbbing with pain, her hands caked with dirt. She found herself in the grand foyer of the manor, though she had no recollection of how she had gotten there. Whispers from the garden echoed in her mind, calling out her name in voices that were not her own. The strange marks on her skin had multiplied, delicate cracks snaking up her arms and emitting a faint glow in the darkness. They stung when she touched them, as if the very stone of the manor was reshaping her from within. Struggling to her feet, Lila made her way to the kitchen and splashed water on her face. only to be confronted by a distorted reflection in the faucet. Her eyes were empty, her mouth frozen in a silent cry, mirroring the eerie statues that adorned the manor. With a racing heart, she realized that the house itself seemed to be alive, its silence heavy with a sense of anticipation. She tried in vain to open the doors and windows, but they remained stubbornly shut, as unyielding as the stone walls that surrounded her. Her phone lay lifeless in her hand, its cracked screen displaying a haunting image of her tear-streaked face. Clutching the letters from Silas Gray, Lila searched for answers. In his writings, he spoke of the statues as vessels for trapped souls, hinting at a ritual to release their sorrow. References to the heart of the garden and a sacrifice of self left her trembling with fear. The final letter, written in a frantic scrawl, spoke of being seen and known by the stone itself. Lila shuddered at the thought of being turned to stone, desperate to find a way to break free from the manor's grip. The wailing grew louder, echoing through the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Faces appeared in the wood grain, the plaster, their mouths moving, their eyes weeping. The house seemed to merge with the garden, both beckoning to her. Hidden letters revealed tales of sorrow and possession, dating back to 1902, 1947, and 1983. Each writer spoke of statues, sobs, and mysterious marks, all concluding with the chilling phrase, "I am theirs." Lila's fear transformed into rage. She refused to succumb to the garden's grasp. With determination, she seized the hammer, intent on destroying the statues and breaking their hold. But the garden had changed, the paths narrowing, the statues drawing closer, their features more defined. The central figure resembling her, wept black tears that pooled at its feet. As Lila raised the hammer, the statue's eyes opened, revealing flesh instead of stone, locking onto hers. The sobbing escalated into a piercing scream, causing the other statues to stir, their stone limbs creaking, their hands reaching out. Despite shattering the statue's arm with the hammer, it regenerated, the stone flowing like liquid. The statue grinned, its mouth mirroring hers, its tears matching hers. Lila fled, the garden twisting around her, the statues in pursuit, their cries drowning out her thoughts. Seeking refuge in the house, she slammed the doors shut, but the sobbing persisted, seeping through the walls. The marks on her arms spread, her skin hardening, her movements becoming sluggish. She felt the weight of stone claiming her, the faces in the walls growing clearer, their eyes mirroring hers, their mouths chanting her name. Lila frantically scoured the house, tearing through rooms until she stumbled upon a hidden door concealed behind a bookshelf. With a mixture of fear and determination, she pushed it open and found herself facing a staircase that descended into darkness. The sound of sobbing grew louder as she made her way down, the air heavy with the scent of roses and something acrid, like ash. Gripping a hammer in one hand and a flickering flashlight in the other, she pressed on. The staircase led her to a chamber lined with statues, small, unfinished figures with blank faces that seemed eerily familiar. In the center of the room, a stone slab stained with dark, glistening tears caught her eye. As the sobbing ceased, whispers filled the air, urging her to join them, to become one of them. Lila felt her marks glowing, her body trembling as she caught sight of her reflection in the slab, tears of darkness streaming down her face. With a sense of dread creeping over her, Lila raised the hammer, but her arm froze in place, her skin cracking and her breath catching in her throat. The statues around her began to move, their blank faces morphing into hers, their hands outstretched towards her. In a moment of sheer terror, she let out a piercing scream and swung the hammer, shattering the stone slab. The chamber trembled, the statues wailing as tears flooded the floor. Lila turned and fled, the staircase collapsing behind her as the house groaned and creaked around her. Racing towards the foyer, she found the door to the garden wide open, the statues waiting for her with faces that mirrored her own, their sobs echoing her own despair. Time was running out, her body beginning to betray her as the stone encroached upon her. With every step she took, the sense of impending doom grew stronger, the realization sinking in that she may never escape the clutches of the haunted house. Lila's body had become a vessel for something otherworldly. The eerie marks etched into her skin, glowing faintly, had spread like a sinister web across her chest, legs, and face. They pulsed with a chilling weight, as if solid stone was seeping into her very veins. Every movement was a struggle, her joints creaking like the ancient statues that loomed in the garden. The house itself seemed to watch her, its walls alive with twisted faces that wept silently, their mournful eyes tracking her every move, their mouths whispering her name in a haunting chorus. Sleep eluded her, and food held no appeal. The sound of sobbing reverberated through the manor, a constant reminder of her torment, echoing in time with her own heartbeat. Everywhere she looked, her reflection stared back at her, but her eyes were empty, weeping black tears that left no trace on her skin. The garden beckoned to her, its whispers promising solace, but Lila knew better. The statues did not offer rest, they sought to claim her as one of their own. Clutching the letters of Silas Gray, her only lifeline, Lila searched for answers. The cryptic mention of a ritual, a sacrifice of self, in the heart of the garden, offered a glimmer of hope, but the details were scarce, the pages torn and incomplete. Discovering hidden writings from a woman named Eliza, dated 1931, Lila learned of the statues as keepers of the weeping, entities that thrived on sorrow, binding souls to stone. Eliza spoke of a central statue, the first and the source of the weeping. Destroy it, she urged, and perhaps the haunting cries would cease. Her final words, etched in desperation, spoke of a chilling realization. It sees me. It cries me. Lila's hands trembled as she read the ominous words before her. The marks on her face seemed to be spreading, her skin growing rigid, her breath shallow. The garden's mysterious allure tugged at her, beckoning her outside with an irresistible force. Despite her efforts to resist, she found herself barricading the doors, only to have the house itself rebel against her. The walls began to crack, the faces within them contorted in agony, their tears pooling on the floor in a viscous mixture of roses and ash. The sound of their sorrowful cries melded into a haunting chant: join, become, be. With a sense of urgency, Lila seized the crowbar, its weight heavier than that of a hammer, and forced herself to venture into the garden. The paths seemed to have shifted, the statues looming closer, their features mirroring her own. Tears cascaded down their stone faces like a torrential downpour. The air grew thick with sorrow, the wails echoing in her ears, the whispers commanding her every move. Despite her body betraying her, her limbs growing stiff and heavy, she pressed on, guided by Eliza's cryptic instructions towards the heart of the garden. There, amidst the statues, stood one larger than the rest. A faceless woman, her form marred by cracks, her hands outstretched as if grasping for something intangible. Black tears streamed from her eyes, pooling at her feet to form a mirror-like surface. Lila's reflection stared back at her, not of stone but of flesh, weeping silently with a mouth agape in a soundless scream. As she raised the crowbar, the statue's hands moved to intercept the blow, its stone fingers surprisingly warm and soft, akin to human skin. The garden let out a deafening scream, the statues closing in around Lila, their sorrowful cries creating a tempestuous storm. As Lila's marks glowed, her body became paralyzed with fear, her breath caught in her throat. The faces of Silas, Eliza, and countless others were trapped in the stone, their eyes pleading for release, tears binding them to their stony prison. The first statue's face began to take shape, resembling Lila's own, with a twisted smile and weeping eyes. With a fierce determination, Lila swung the crowbar, striking the statue's chest and causing it to crack open, releasing black tears that flooded the garden. The statues let out agonizing screams as their bodies crumbled. But the first statue remained standing, its face becoming clearer, its hands outstretched towards Lila. She felt her body turning to stone, her legs rooted to the ground, her arms locked in place. As she watched her life flash before her eyes, her failed business, her lonely nights, her shattered hopes, she realized the whispers of eternity were nothing but lies. The statues were not at peace, they were prisoners. With a surge of willpower fueled by fear, Lila let out a primal scream that shattered through the stone, striking the statue's face and causing it to crumble. The garden trembled, tears rising and swallowing the statues, the paths, and the house. Lila ran towards the manor, her body finally her own, the crowbar slipping from her grasp as the whispers faded into nothingness. But as she reached the manor, she found the doors gone, the walls collapsing, and the faces within them screaming her name. The garden appeared to vanish before her eyes, leaving Lila standing in an empty lot with the house in ruins and the statues reduced to dust. Yet the marks on her skin continued to glow faintly, and the echoes of sobbing lingered. Lila believed she had emerged victorious, only to find that the tears continued to flow unabated. She fled from the garden, the house, the statues, stumbling through the desolate streets of Greyhaven, her body battered and her skin etched with glowing fissures. A concerned passerby discovered her, his eyes widening at the sight of her torn garments and trembling hands. He whisked her away to a nearby motel, bombarding her with questions to which she had no answers. She kept silent about the statues, the wails, the visage in the stone that mirrored her own. She kept silent about the faint yet persistent whispers that beckoned her back. The motel was dingy, its walls paper-thin, its mirrors shrouded in sheets at Lila's behest. She attempted to cleanse herself in the shower, scouring her skin to rid herself of the marks, but they only grew darker, twisting like vines and pulsating with an icy, stony weight. Her reflection, glimpsed in the gleam of a faucet, was distorted. Her eyes wept ebony tears, her lips mouthed words she did not utter. Recoiling, she found the sobbing trailing after her, resonating within her chest, her bones, her very thoughts. Desperate to flee Greyhaven, she purchased a bus ticket, only to be confronted by her reflection in the station's glass doors, not her own, but that of the initial statue, its featureless countenance grinning, its hands beckoning. The whispers swelled, propelling Lila back to the motel, where she barricaded herself inside. The markings spread, her skin solidifying, her movements sluggish. She felt burdened, her breast shallow, as though the stone was taking root within her. Lila delved into the depths of the motel's archaic computer in search of answers. The history of Greyhaven was shrouded in mystery, but she unearthed references to the manor, the garden, and the weeping that haunted the land. An article from the 19th century spoke of a malevolent force known as the Stone Sorrow, a curse that ensnared those who dared to linger. A chilling account from 1952 detailed the disappearances of individuals last seen near the garden, their bodies never to be found. A cryptic blog post, since deleted but preserved in the cache, forewarned of statues that wept in sorrow, binding souls to stone. It concluded with a haunting plea: "Leave before you see your face." As the sound of sobbing intensified and whispers beckoned her closer, Lila felt a primal fear grip her. Strange markings began to sear her skin, her limbs stiffening as if rooted to the spot. Faces materialized in the walls, the ceiling, the floor of the motel, her own visage contorted in anguish, joy, and terror. The stone's insidious influence crept through her veins, claiming her as its own, and she realized that the garden's malevolence had not dissipated. It lingered everywhere, permeating the town, the very air she breathed. Driven by an unshakable compulsion, Lila knew she had to return. The ritual she had begun to destroy the first statue, to sacrifice herself, remained unfinished. Armed with a tire iron from the motel's shed, her hands trembling with dread, she ventured out into the silent, desolate streets of Greyhaven. The manor stood in ruins, its walls crumbling, but the garden stood unchanged, its statues looming ominously. Their faces mirrored her own, tears cascading down their stone cheeks, as she braced herself for the harrowing task ahead. The first statue stood ominously at the center of the garden, its face twisted in agony, tears streaming down its cheeks. Lila's reflection appeared in the tears, a haunting image of herself screaming out her name. As she raised the tire iron in fear, the statue suddenly moved, its cold, lifeless hands grabbing hold of hers. The other statues in the garden began to close in, their stone limbs creaking as they transformed into grotesque versions of Lila herself. Lila's body betrayed her, turning to stone as she watched in horror. The faces of her friends, Silas and Eliza, stared back at her from within the stone, their eyes empty and tears eternal. The first statue's smile mirrored her own, its whispers promising peace but delivering only darkness. The garden was not a place of freedom, but a place of consumption. With a fierce determination, Lila fought against the stone that threatened to engulf her. She struck the first statue, causing black tears to gush forth and flood the garden. The other statues screamed as they crumbled, but the first statue remained standing, its grip tightening around her. Lila's very essence seemed to be draining away, her life flashing before her eyes. Summoning all her strength, Lila let out a primal scream and shattered the statue's face, causing the garden to collapse around her. As she crawled from the ruins, the town fading into the distance, she knew she was finally free. The marks on her body still glowed, a reminder of the darkness she had faced and conquered. But she was alive, and the whispers that once haunted her were now silent. She had emerged from the darkness, stronger and more resilient than ever before. Lila fled Greyhaven, but the haunting sorrow pursued her relentlessly. Seeking solace in a distant city, she took up residence in a modest apartment, devoid of adornment and devoid of reflection. Working in isolation, she shunned human contact and avoided her own image. Yet the eerie cracks on her skin, faintly glowing, refused to fade. They throbbed with a chilling weight, a constant reminder of the stone that dwelled within her. The weeping, though muted, lingered in her heart, stirring her from slumber with a haunting whisper of her name. Keeping her affliction hidden, Lila found no respite from the eternal lament. In her dreams, she was confronted by the visage of the first statue, its featureless face twisted in a sorrowful smile, tears cascading down its stone cheeks, mirroring her own anguish. Even her reflection betrayed her, her eyes too dark, her lips moving in a silent plea for release. She averted her gaze, but the sorrowful wails persisted. The sanctuary of her apartment proved illusory. Cracks materialized in the walls, morphing into grotesque faces that wept black tears, permeating the air with the scent of roses and ash. Despite her efforts to conceal them, the fissures reappeared, a relentless reminder of her inescapable fate. The sobbing intensified, the voices growing more insistent. You belong to us. You are stone. Lila's skin burned with a searing pain, her body stiffening as if drawn back to the garden she had left behind, a world away yet ever present in her torment. Lila fled Greyhaven, but the haunting sorrow pursued her relentlessly. Seeking solace in a distant city, she took up residence in a modest apartment, devoid of adornment and devoid of reflection. Working in isolation, she shunned human contact and avoided her own image. Yet the eerie cracks on her skin, faintly glowing, refused to fade. They throbbed with a chilling weight, a constant reminder of the stone that dwelled within her. The weeping, though muted, lingered in her heart, stirring her from slumber with a haunting whisper of her name. Keeping her affliction hidden, Lila found no respite from the eternal lament. In her dreams, she was confronted by the visage of the first statue, its featureless face twisted in a sorrowful smile, tears cascading down its stone cheeks, mirroring her own anguish. Even her reflection betrayed her eyes too dark, her lips moving in a silent plea for release. She averted her gaze, but the sorrowful wails persisted. The sanctuary of her apartment proved illusory. Cracks materialized in the walls, morphing into grotesque faces that wept black tears, permeating the air with the scent of roses and ash. Despite her efforts to conceal them, the fissures reappeared, a relentless reminder of her inescapable fate. The sobbing intensified, the voices growing more insistent. You belong to us. You are stone. Lila's skin burned with a searing pain, her body stiffening as if drawn back to the garden she had left behind, a world away yet ever present in her torment. She fought desperately, scouring the depths of the internet, libraries, and ancient texts in search of answers. What she discovered were tales of weeping grounds, where sorrowful spirits were bound to stone, their tears sustaining them. A forgotten scholar's note revealed a ritual to break this curse, involving the destruction of the initial statue and a sacrifice of will. Lila had destroyed the statue, but her resolve was waning, the stone encroaching. The apartment trembled, cracks spiderwebbing across the walls, the faces etched in agony. Everywhere she looked, she saw them, weeping, smiling, beckoning. Seeking refuge in the bathroom, the only intact room, she locked the door. Her reflection in the gleaming faucet was not her own, but that of the first statue, its hands outstretched, tears streaming. She shattered the faucet, but the image persisted, growing clearer, closer. The chorus of sobs grew deafening, commanding her to succumb. Lila's skin glowed, her body rigid, her breath caught in her throat. The faces of Silas, Eliza, and countless others stared back at her from the stone, their eyes vacant, tears binding them. The garden, once thought lost, pulsed with life within her, within the city, within the world. The weeping surrounded her, and she was its vessel. Her will wavered as her very essence dissolved into the stone. The whispers promised tranquility, but it was a deceit. The statues were not at peace. They were prisoners, their tears fueling the eternal weeping. Lila's scream pierced the air, her own voice echoing back at her as she fled from the bathroom, the apartment now a labyrinth of cracks and shadows. The walls wept, the faces mirrored her own, the sobbing a haunting echo of her despair. She fled the city, driving without direction, the scars glowing, the crying unrelenting. She sought refuge at a roadside motel, its walls stark, its mirrors veiled. But the weeping followed her. The fractures reappeared, the faces more distinct, the tears heavier. Lila understood she could not escape. The garden resided within her, the stone was a part of her, and the weeping was unending. Standing before a window, the glass unobscured, reflecting the night, the weeping, herself. Her reflection resembled a statue, its visage hers, its tears hers. She pressed her hand against the glass, the stone inside her throbbing, the sobbing consuming. The ritual had not failed, it had ensnared her. She wept, tears of stone, her body stiffening, her essence dissolving. Months later, a new occupant took up residence in Lila's apartment. They discovered a statue in the closet, small and cracked, its face shedding black tears. They placed it on a shelf, admiring its haunting beauty. That evening they heard a sob, faint and damp, like rain on stone. They did not conceal it. They were unaware. The weeping was patient, and it knew their identity.